It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I was just looking at some polling here at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal poll that was out.
Right.
Biden is behind Trump by 4 percentage points on a hypothetical ballot. Trump's lead expands to 6 points when 5 potential third-party and independent candidates are added to the mix. They take a combined 17% support, with Democrat-turned-independent Robert Kennedy Jr. drawing the most at 8%. Unhappiness with Biden is pervasive in the new survey. Let me just see here. Only 23% of voters say Biden's policies have helped them. 53% said they've been hurt by the president's agenda. Half of voters say Trump's policies when he was president helped them. Personally, more than 37% say that they were hurt.
All right.
Let me just see here. Some 37% approve of Biden's job performance, a low in journal polling during his presidency. So he hit the lowest in Wall Street Journal. 61% see his overall image in an unfavorable light. Bidenomics, the president's signature economic platform, which about 10 days ago they stopped mentioning. You will no longer hear Bidenomics coming from the White House.
Unless it's Peter Doocy.
Yeah. That
Which
would be
at the White House,
the
not
White House.
from the White House.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Bidenomics, the president's signature economic platform, when you ask about it, is viewed favorably by less than 30% of voters. Excuse me, is viewed favorably by less than 30% of voters and unfavorably by more than half. The one interesting thing here that I found, they did Nikki Haley. Trump would beat him by 4. What do you think Nikki Haley would beat in the Wall Street Journal poll? What would Nikki Haley beat Biden by? 17 points.
I was going to say 10. You heard Romney. Nikki Haley's the only one who can beat Biden. Or
Yes.
the one who can beat Biden. I don't know if he said only, but basically implying she needs to be the nominee. Well, it's not going to happen. Unless Trump himself decides, or there's a health crisis with Trump, the nominee is going to be Trump. I don't see that changing.
Okay, you ready for this?
All right.
And this is Wall Street Journal. Now, you could answer, Trump, Biden, or I don't know. On the economy, Trump, 52% would want Trump, 35% Biden. Inflation, 51%. This is who's better able to handle the issue. Trump, 51% on inflation, 30% for Biden. Those are the people that want more inflation. Crime, Trump, 47%, Biden, 30%. Border security, Trump, 54%, Biden, 24%. Israel, Hamas, Trump, 44%, Biden, 32%.
No. Wow.
Abortion, Biden, 44%, Trump, 33%. That's the only issue. Except for, and this isn't an issue, tone in politics. Biden, 37%, Trump, 31%.
Wow.
Neither get over 40% in the tone in politics.
All right.
Oh, my.
But he has such good tone. You know, the inflation isn't that bad when you consider his tone. Enriching his family And all of that, it's not so bad when you consider his tone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is that why? Do you think this just popped into my head? So I haven't analyzed this at all. There may be, you might be able to drive a truck through this hypothetical. The one that shows Nikki Haley in a hypothetical matchup with Joe Biden has a 17-point lead, 51-34, and they have should the matchup materialize, which it won't. And the margin hold, it would represent the largest winning general margin since 1984 when Reagan topped Mondale by 18 points. But in order to happen, as they point out, she has to beat the fact that she's down by Trump by 40 points.
Yeah, there's that.
But do you think that's why? I think the Democrats are going, well, if it's a woman, remember, they think identity politics all the time.
Sure, yeah.
The woman could beat Joe. Maybe if we brought in a woman and got rid of Joe, which is why they think in Hillary. Remember, they think in a bizarre way.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll bring in Hillary, a woman, and this time she could beat Trump handily. Or did they do some internal polls?
Yeah, probably internal polls. But I think right now, when you look at it, it's not going to shape up that way again unless there's a health crisis with Trump. I do question whether or not we could see a Trump-Haley ticket. And it's because of what she pulls with independents. And if independents are willing to, the ones who wouldn't support Trump but would support her is who I'm talking about, if they're willing to bite their lip for 4 years. That's a huge ask for a lot of those independents. If they're not on board for Trump now, you're asking them essentially to, because we all know, we saw it with Pence. For those who don't know, Mike Pence was the vice president under Trump for 4 years. And those, I don't know that those independents would change. That's the logic of the past. Remember in 2012, Paul Ryan being brought on to the Mitt Romney ticket for his conservative street cred.
Remember the excitement when that happened?
It was like, oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Nobody in the Trump, that's already in the Trump corner, would be motivated by Nikki Haley. It's not going to be, oh, yeah, that's a perfect. It's really not. It kind of has to be somebody who is right now on the, what they called in 2016, fully on board the Trump train. And even though she was UN ambassador during the Trump years, it's still right now, it's everything has changed. It just doesn't work that way with Trump. So, I just don't see Nikki Haley being the nominee, certainly not before 2028. And I also don't see her dropping out. I don't see her dropping out because she's going to have the money. She's got new money now.
This Wall Street Journal poll will help her get more money.
She's not going to drop out. So DeSantis has money, but again, does he want to be a sitting governor of a state and, get to March 5th and lose Florida as the sitting governor of
I don't
Florida?
think he'd be in by that time.
I don't see him being in by that time, even though he's got plenty of money to stay in by that time.
The only thing is, if you see the number, as I told you the other day, when I saw the numbers for Iowa, which seemed to be closing in a little bit, where it was, a 23-point lead for Trump there?
Yeah.
And, it wasn't 40 or 50 or 60, and then you look back and you say, okay, has that ever been done before where somebody has come back at this time in December and still won Iowa? And maybe not this far back, but there has been movement of 25 points with a candidate. I think it was what's his name from Ohio?
Kasich.
Kasich did it.
Yeah.
Kasich did it this time. A few years back, he had like, I forgot what he had, but it was single digits, and he like increased to 23 points. By the time you got to the Iowa caucus, so
yeah,
it is possible. Is it likely? No.
And even if DeSantis wins Iowa, does it give you the momentum that it would have in the past? Well, it didn't work for Ted Cruz in 2016. He didn't gain that momentum after Iowa. And, there's the problem. I mean, you have Iowa, and then you only have a matter of weeks before you get to your home state of Florida. And if it doesn't give you that momentum, you got to be out long before March 5th. And, that's because nothing applies. Anything, that have applied, that may have applied traditionally in the political arena.
All right, let's look at this from the point that not about you want to still continue to run, but if you're asking the question, what would be best for DeSantis's future? Forget about the election. What would be best? And what comes to my mind is he had 2 great outings. He did. He did good in the last debate.
Sure.
Yeah. And he did very, very well. You take that, you say, it's not my time at this moment. I want to focus on Florida, but I will be back to run for president again.
Yeah.
That you take the high that the public is looking at you, because of that debate and then this debate, more the public is looking at you and saying, all right, good job.
Mm-hmm.
But when you've got with what's going on right now, it's not my time, but I will be back. And I'm going to focus on Florida.
I think that's becoming more, by the moment, becoming more and more inevitable. But are you asking, should he do that between now and the 1st?
Well, I'm saying that if you're looking at him and you're saying what's in his best interest in his own self-interest, it's not to stay in and lose Florida.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want any loss in Florida.
Yeah. And you really want to be off the ballot, as long as possible if you just don't see that changing.
Right. Because I think he's got because of what he has done of substance in Florida, I think he's got a long window to run for president of the United States.
Yeah.
Nikki Haley? Is it now? I mean, is Nikki Haley a viable candidate? If she dropped out 4 years from now, 8 years from now. And again, my own personal prejudice come in. The reason I like DeSantis over Haley is he's got a track record of success.
Yeah. Yeah. Recent track record in the face of the radical left.
Right. Not that she doesn't.
Right.
But he is a recent one that's really gone after the left.
Right. Yeah, you can make the argument on the trial by fire thing with him because of the recent radical stuff that's come at him and he's been able to defeat time and time again. Now, going back to my other, question or scenario, if Nikki Haley is asked to be on the Trump ticket, does she say yes and say, I bide my time for 2028 because I could be a 2-term president in 28. I would get the nomination because if that were the case, and then theoretically they won, and then she became a 2-term president. I'm going out on a very long bridge here, so just bear with me. That would mean that it would be 2036 before DeSantis would run. for president.
Unless
he was asked to be on her ticket.
If you ask me just generically, no. Because the majority of people who tie themselves to Trump are no longer probably on speaking terms with him.
Including his former VP.
Right.
And
I don't care about what you think about him. I'm simply saying you're asking me to be his vice president, and I see that the vast majority of people that have worked with him no longer agree with him on so many things.
Well, that's going to be.
There's no reason to tie my wagon to his.
And you sit it out and you I don't know what you do. You're not.
I don't think he would want her. I don't think
he would either. I think that's already a done deal, and I think again it has to be from his perspective, probably somebody who is right now already fully on board. And there are a few names being thrown around.
But it's not going to be Carrie Lake because she's running for...
No, it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be her either.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
This season's national production of oranges could end up being just under 2.75 million tons, which would be 10% higher than last year. On the surface, that seems to be good news, and it is. However,
the only thing that's saving this year when it comes to things like drop and fruit size is that last year was so bad.
USDA's chief economist Seth Meyer says that certainly applies to the Florida crop.
And the only reason that you would come up with a number that says in the case for Florida, for some of these orange crops, that it looks better than last year is because last year's drop was so horrendous because of the two hurricanes.
This year's been fairly calm weather-wise. USDA's forecasting Florida orange production 923,000 tons, 30% higher than last season. Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just reading here, California, their new deficit, $68 billion.
Wow.
And Wall Street Journal talking about it, the state's progressive tax code strikes again. 0.1% of the population pays for a third of the budget. That's 0.1%. Pays a third. Top 1% pay over 50% of all the taxes. The top 1/10 of 1% pay 30%. This is something that, remember when Governor Cuomo was in New York and was against the millionaire's tax when he first got in. People forget about this. He got in and said, I don't want it because we have such a progressive tax system. They tax the rich so much that if the rich move, they lose a tremendous amount of revenue.
He said on that he couldn't afford to be liberal, remember?
Yeah.
Couldn't afford to be a Democrat.
And then he backed off.
Yep.
And what you're finding out, and this is why we'll get into the more of the minutia of this, because I think it's really, really interesting. Where do these states go that have taxed the rich so much when the rich say, okay, bye-bye, we're going to go? Yeah. How do you straighten out? $68 billion. We haven't heard Newsom talk much about reparations. Wow, that didn't come up in the debate, did it?
I don't think so.
That never came up.
I don't think it ever came up.
Oh, wow, just thought about that one.
Missed opportunity on that one, huh?
Yep.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yes, so the story was that California budget bus arrived. The state's progressive tax code strikes again. New deficit projected to be $68 billion shortfall over the next 5 years, $155 billion. And we know how that always goes up. We know the projections are always low.
Yeah, right.
And but in cumulative deficits, $155 billion they expect over the next 4 years. This is interesting. Think about this: $68 billion for this year. For comparison, Florida's entire general fund budget, $46.1 billion this year. I don't think that includes that for Florida. That does not include. That's our entire general fund budget. That doesn't include, for example, things like the state for Medicaid and things like that. Because I read Florida's total budget, not just general revenue or general fund budget, was like $100 billion.
Okay.
It's still a lot lower than, I mean, it's half of what, for example, New York is. And, and New York has less population than Florida.
Right.
But that's really incredible. And they said one reason that they blame here is we're actually talking about the real culprit for California's budget shortfall as ever is its progressive tax system and how the politicians exploit it. The top 1% of taxpayers in California pay 50% of state income tax. The top 0.1% pay 33% of the taxes. During the fat years, the state's 13.3 top income tax rate throws off enormous revenue that the state of California proceeds to spend with new long-term commitments to keep spending it that can't be withdrawn when the lean years arrive. And that's what's happening. They go, Democrats don't prepare for droughts because they assume they can always raise taxes on the wealthy when revenues dry up. That will be harder this time because so many of the wealthy have left the state of California. And that's the problem that you're going to see, especially everything was accelerated. You and I have talked about this extensively. Everything changed after COVID.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything changed after COVID, the way that people look at where they live, where they wish to live, money, then the inflation since then.
I mean, it really accelerated everything that, and this is why in the past, the Democrats have been, again, moving a lot slower on everything on their agenda. It was about boiling that frog slowly. Well, they seem to think, because what they do is they capitalize on fear. They started with 15 days to flatten the curve. And well over 2 years later, still trying to flatten the curve. And their answer has always been throw money at it. Well, what do you throw at a global pandemic? A global amount of money.
Yeah.
And then inflation. Well, people's minds were changing during that point because they really didn't consider what people were actually going through. They just thought if we just keep throwing money at it, they'll respond the way they always have. The fact of the matter is with inflation now, people feel like that money's being taken back, and 100 times more than anything that was doled out during that time. Well, now we're paying for it, and we're going to pay for it from here on out. And you can't reverse that. You can't undo the impact of inflation where, again, a compounding effect year after year after year where they don't see prices going down. 2018, 2019 wasn't that long ago. But it seems like light years after you make a trip to the grocery store or pull through a drive-thru at a fast food place.
Did you see they had the Home Alone comparison where Kevin McAllister, remember he walked into the store
and
bought that stuff and it was $19.
Right.
And that goes back to the early 90s.
Right.
I think now the same thing would cost $79.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing to think about what all has transpired. But there was no way it wasn't going to happen when you go as big as they went on spending and everything else. Their overreaction, I think, to COVID on lockdowns, we're seeing that play out. We're seeing where now the policy on all of that, because it came up over the weekend in a conversation, and somebody was saying, well, they just get enough power again, they'll shut everything down for the flu or whatever else. I don't think anyone's going to tolerate that anymore, even people on the left. We're just not going to get to the point of as a society. This was the problem with Democrats, and I think it has to land on rank and file Democrats, because if you wanted them to have that control, if you thought the answer was that, remember the whole New York City and the soda cup size ban, and salt in restaurants. Oh, but we need them to do that because we can't think for ourselves. We need them to do that. We need them to do that. I think a lot of that is gone. Not with all of them, but I think a great amount of that is gone, because we're at that point now where people realize, you know what, at the end of it all, I'm going to be left, number one, I'm going to be left alone. They're not going to be around. They're not here to save me. They're not my savior. And then number two, and I'm thinking, again, not our listeners, but people who thought that way in the past. And number two, I'm going to pay for it one way or the other.
How do you can't do again, let's say it happened a year from now, that another virus came. You can't shut it down again.
No, you can't.
And pay people.
You can't.
That's
never going to happen.
You can't do that again. Inflation, you do that on top of everything that we've seen, inflation would skyrocket.
What scares me is what concerns me. I shouldn't say scares. What concerns me is a pandemic that's a lot more serious and a lot deadlier even than COVID. When you were seeing things play out with COVID in the first months, we had no idea what we were dealing with. And anyone in the public just had to sit around and basically wait. I saw an old clip of Bill Burr on with Joe Rogan saying, look, I'm not an expert. You're not an expert. I just wait. This week, if they're telling me to wear a mask, I put a mask on. If next week they tell me to take the mask off, I take the mask off. That's kind of where people were back then. I'm not saying Bill Burr represented everybody, but people kind of did that. Now there's going to be a lack of trust. The whole cry wolf thing is going to be in play because it changed the entire world. It changed how we do business. It's killing commercial real estate right now, the fallout.
Yeah, it's a great point. It still hasn't.
It has not.
It's not ended,
and won't recover. We're not going to recover. There's certain things about the economy that won't recover from the overreaction. So we won't tolerate things like that because we understand. Look, we're on our own. We have to fix this. Deal with it however we're going to deal with it. And heaven help us if it's a deadlier pandemic.
And when you see that the vast majority of the things that government told us was not true.
Right.
Some I believe were intentional because we still haven't gotten to the bottom of the fact that if you got the shot, that, you then could go to work because you wouldn't pass it on.
Yeah, right.
Which we found was completely and totally false.
Exactly.
And there was never any evidence
Right.
The pharmaceutical companies were not passing on to the government, we've done this test, and if you take the vaccine, you're not going to pass it on.
Right.
That never happened.
Right.
So that lie was created because it wasn't true. It wasn't backed by any of the evidence that existed in the trials of the vaccines to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you look at that, you look at the whole mask thing. I saw the CDC director over the weekend again suggesting masks again, and it was like, wow, I wouldn't want to be the person promoting that again now.
Not even, I don't want to be anywhere close to the person that's doing that, because you're not going to connect at all with people, and you're drawing a political line is what you're doing more and more. What we're seeing right now with the implosion of things on the left, a lot of it is connected with the COVID era and the over-response to COVID, because it's tied to inflation, which is about spending during COVID. It's tied to big government actions. We know better than you when we're actually doing the opposite of what we're telling you to do. And we've been caught multiple times. It goes beyond hypocrisy. They never believed the science themselves.
No, they never did.
If they did for one moment believe that science, would they be doing what they were doing?
No.
It's not about the hypocrisy. It's about the fact that they never believed it to begin with.
Yeah. Newsom was caught twice.
Yes.
Because he didn't believe the science that he was selling you, or the lack of science that he was selling you.
If I believed that science, I wouldn't be taking a selfie. In fact, I wouldn't be anywhere near one of the most famous HIV patients that this society has ever known, Magic Johnson.
Right.
Let alone taking a selfie with him.
For the fact that he had an underlying condition. That's an underlying condition.
I would not want to be anywhere. I don't want to. No. I don't want to put him in danger.
Right.
Yet they were taking selfies. They didn't believe the science from the beginning. They didn't buy into it.
Nope.
And that lack of trust right now.
Well, it brings you to this question. If they didn't buy the science because they weren't paying attention to it, then it's a legit question, which will form conspiracy theories. Then why were they selling it to the public?
Exactly. Because they could control it. They believed that the public would buy the fear. It's the only answer I can come up with.
And the outcome is what?
The outcome is, well, they hope the outcome is we can keep this going and we can have full control. But there's no way to do that. That's the delusional mind of a liberal Democrat, that you could keep it going forever. You darn sure can't do the spending. Lawrence Summers tried to warn them on that. Don't do it. And they did it. Here we are.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We had said this earlier in the show, but I think it bears repeating because it would be interesting to see what the Republicans say today and what the Democrats say today about the charges against Hunter Biden. And that's because there may be an impeachment inquiry vote this week. And what the defense is from the Democrats, which went very quiet. The media, everybody went very quiet on this. And I know there were some Republicans and even said, well, this shows that they're trying to hide Joe Biden. The indictment hides Biden from it. Really doesn't. It continues to connect the dots.
Yep.
It doesn't. Again, the indictment doesn't say we're going after the president on this, but the fact is, it makes it much easier for the Republicans to connect the dots to Joe Biden.
Yep.
And we'll see if the Democrats still want to go to their fallback position, which is the entire Biden family was corrupt, except Joe Biden. That it was the illusion of influence peddling, which meant everyone, all the brothers and Hunter Biden, were selling fake access to the president The president didn't know it when he was vice president or in between. Didn't know it. He knew completely clueless for over a decade that any of this was going on.
Right.
Because that's what they're trying to sell. Yet the entire family benefited tens of millions of dollars on it. They all used Joe Biden, and Joe Biden just loved them, and they just betrayed him completely. That's what they're attempting to sell the public. Yes.
Yeah. That doesn't fly.
No, that's not going to fly. But that's where they are right now. That's what they're trying to convince the public of. They have not been successful at doing it. Let's see what they do this week.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.